Duet Night Abyss is in a critical state. It is not just because of this latest incident where some troll hacked the Duet Night Abyss servers and put everybody in schizo mode. The unfortunate thing about this incident is that we just had the PayPal Arknights incident that went nuclear. And so people were already schizoing out after that, right? So for something like this to happen, it's a bit bad timing and unfortunate because that just happened the other day. And so now people are really gonna like fucking be on the defense, right? But just to give perspective to what happened, people logged in. It didn't happen to me, by the way, and I played every day this week. I think maybe because I'm on Steam. In fact, if you were on Steam, I'd be curious to know, guys, just for in terms of informative for the community. Did this happen to you guys? Because I'm on Steam and I never once saw this shit, and I was logged in again every day this week. Regardless, that's not to like take away for that this did in fact occur on other parts of the world. It's just like a matter of objective information. What happened is, I think in Europe and other respective regions, people logged into Duet Night Abyss and they saw Kitaro_GGG. This is usually going to say United States or your respective region, right? That's a server. And so you click start game, you go into there. Now, the cause of concern with a lot of people that had this happen to them is, did I just click go in to a malware? Did I just click go in to some fucking bozo on the other side of the earth that now has my personal information, and I'm going to wake up to a $10,000 credit card charge and shit? You know, there's a lot to think about from that point of view, and that is the cause of concern. It's safety and security from people who had this problem. And regardless of Duet Night Abyss, they did put out their letter saying, hey, we assure you that nothing of that extent could have or would have happened despite us getting hacked. It doesn't matter if that's true or not. At this point, people aren't going to buy it, even if it is. And I think they're completely justified in having that sensation. Just briefly going over the situation for those of you who aren't caught up. They then said data security clarification, right? You can read through that, but they're basically just saying, you know, core user data is stored using encryption. Rest assured, there's no way this would have happened. They're trying to like qualm the fires of people going, what if my shit got hacked? What if this happened? What if this happened? And then follow-up actions, they're saying, we're going to ensure that none of this ever happens again. We're going to strengthen security. We understand that you won't take our words. We'll follow through with our actions. They give an apology with no compensation. That's not a good look. You got to give compensation when you fuck up like that. Even if it was just some little blunder at the smallest capacity, you got to compensate, guys. You can't, an apology is not enough for that. Compensate people. It always helps just a little bit to qualm the angry hearts of your player base. So you're all caught up on this. All right, we're all caught up on this. You know, the Reddit thread's been popping off, going over like, there's a lot of fun ass memes. I'm gonna be real, bro. There's a lot of funny memes on this Reddit thread. There's a lot of funny memes. You can go in here and look at it. Me checking up on the state of the game, the honeymoon phase being over, servers being taken over. Like, holy, it really is unfortunate. But I'm not just here to talk about that. I'm not just here to talk about the thing that you've already seen, probably other creators and other people talking about. The reality of Duet Night Abyss right now, and it pains me to say this because I love their team. I love their community manager. I have sponsors in the future set up with this game, right? So it's not that I actually even want to step out of my, good graces with them and criticize what needs to be said. It's kind of just the reality of the situation, and it's who I am as a creator. These guys were already kind of down in the dumps with this game before this incident even happened. It's been on a downward trend. There's already been negative publicity with the game, simply because honestly, it's kind of been a bit of an identity crisis where it converted from being a gacha game wholeheartedly originally to shifting to being a looter shooter with some of those gacha aspects still lingering around and being present because, well, they didn't have enough time to completely change the direction of the game they had in mind versus the game they have today. And so what happened is the game comes out, it launches, and you've got gacha players who are used to playing 15 minutes a day and getting everything they want in their game within the 15 to 30 minute span. Now playing a game that requires you to grind the living fuck out of it, a looter shooter dynamic that's also a bit of a closer identity to games like Diablo 4 or Path of Exile, where you grind the fuck out of the games for in-game loop, and then you go into these modes and test the viability and optimization of your character's builds and strategies. That clash kind of enabled gacha players to like pretty much and almost in their entirety run away from the game. And then players like Warframe come in here and they like the game, or they go, I'll just continue playing Warframe. This game needs a bit more cooking in the oven, right? And so you have this dynamic where month by month it's going by, and players are getting cut in half, right? Cut in half, cut in half, cut in half. But there's a small community of people who do acknowledge that this game is enjoyable and with time can get better. The problem is time is not on this game's side. Let's look at some of the statistics of everything that's going on. And then at the end of this video, I want to provide real solutions as to, not only do I want to provide real solutions, I want to ask real questions as to whether they can recover. And if they can, what could they do to recover and potentially tap into some other markets? Let's get into it. One of the first things I want to check out here is the Steam charts. Now, this game just became accessible on Steam back in January. So this is not an accurate measure of the entirety of the Duet Night Abyss player base. We still have mobile devices such as iOS and Android. We still have their in-house Duet Night Abyss download, which you can download straight from them. You don't have to play on Steam. And I think there's one more platform. I can't remember if it's like Epic Games or something, but there's a whole nother platform there too. And so when we look at all of that aggregated data, you have on Steam a peak player base of 1,400 when it came out in January, and now a peak player base in the last 30 days of about 2,000 people. Just to give you guys some perspective, the average player is 1,000 in January, and now it's 979, and now it's 750 in the last hour with a 24-hour peak of 1,000. How does that fare to other games? I brought up other games such as Monster Hunter Wilds, Diablo 4, and Tribe 9, just to give you more of a perspective on how games perform on Steam. And so when we go to Monster Hunter Wilds, this game is a heavy game on Steam. It is heavily, the bulk of its player base is literally on Steam. So this is not a one-to-one, just more of another reference point. When Monster Hunter Wilds launched, it had 1,179,000 active players on Steam, well, peaking, right? And then in the next month, it got cut in half. And then in the next month, it got cut in a quarter damn near, right? And so you saw the drop off in this game was fucking massive because Wilds was actually a shit show of a launch outside of that first playthrough window. And so when you look at something like that, you'll notice it lost 90% of its player base, right? Or like 80% of its player base. But the size of the player base was so fucking massive. And keep in mind, Wilds is also on console as well. But the size of the player base was so massive that it doesn't matter that it lost all those players because look at it today, 85,000 peak players, active on average 25,000. That is a massive amount of players just on Steam, not considering console, right? And so when we look at that, this game can afford, especially considering all of the years of the Monster Hunter genre and the reputation and the rapport it has, it can afford to lose all those people because it's still going to have those dedicated players. When we look at a game like Diablo 4, that doesn't have the bulk of its player base on Steam, but it does have a sizable player base on Steam. When you look at Diablo 4, it fell off so goddamn hard, it is laughable. This game lost like 99% of its player base. I'm not even kidding, like 99%. And even then, it's still got, to this day, an average of 6,400 players and 10,000 peak players. And this game literally died. It just didn't die because Diablo is a massive fucking IP, right? So it can still afford to do its thing because it's got that dedicated base. When you look at the entirety of Diablo 4, when you consider the other platforms it's on as well, Diablo probably still has 20,000 people playing it on average daily. It's just that big of a game despite losing literally like 99% of its player base. And so when we look at these numbers, it can afford to do that, right? But when you look at smaller games like Tribe 9 and Duet Night Abyss, Tribe 9 was heavily on Steam, by the way. It did have a large bulk of its players on Steam. Its peak players at launch was not even 10,000 players, right? And then it had a shit launch. In the next month, that gets cut in half, right? In terms of not peak players, but in terms of average players, that gets cut in half. And then it gets cut in half again. And then it gets cut in 3 on that month of May, which is when it announced end of service. And so when you're pushing this low of a volume on your game, this is when you kind of enter that critical period of, and I'm going to bring up some of the talking points. Do we have enough players to continue pouring into this live service game that has a expensive production pipeline. We have to take into consideration events we're putting into the game, resources we're pouring into the game for characters coming out, story being updated with voice actors, as well as an in-game expansion, and maintenance, and all the other things that go in tandem with keeping a live service game afloat. You have to now weigh that versus how much money is coming in with the player base that's continuing to play the game. And I want to be make sure we're perfectly clear here. When you look at Duet Night Abyss, I would say if it has an average right now of 979 players on here, and then we come over here and we look at Twitch, and it's got an average of 50 viewers, not players, 50 viewers, which means, you know, it's an information that you can't really extrapolate anything from it. You can make an educated guess. If we come down here and we look at average viewers, in January 2026, it's not a lot of people, right? But if I had to take a guess at how many people are playing Duet Night Abyss on the mobile devices, as well as their in-house client and then Steam and all together, it might, and this is me trying to be as fair as I can, it might have about 5,000 to 6,000, max 10,000 players, max. And the question becomes, how many of those players are going to continue playing the game and not drop off? I came over here to look at their live streams. When they first launched, 169,000 views. A lot of people held on because of 1.1 looked so jaw-droppingly beautiful when they teased it. And so people came to check out 1.1. It was 252,000 views. And then a lot of people didn't like the experience of 1.1. And so they kind of dipped out, right? And so now we've got the latest update, which was 44,000 views. You can see that was a massive drop off in interest over here. When I come over here to my actual account and I look at my friends list and I go to last online, you know, last online 30 days, 30 days, 30 days, you know, a lot of the metrics are pointing to people dropping off. Right. And you'll look at it. These are veterans. These aren't people who like played at level 20 and fucking dipped off. Level 58, level 60, 56, 60, 62, 62. These are veterans, actually one level higher than me, that haven't been on in 30 days. It's just, it's in that critical state, right? There's just no denying it, guys. And if you're wondering, Smack, you don't even play the game. I have Zilio with her signature weapon. She just came out. The character before her, not only do I have her, I have shit that you actually have to grind for, bro. This is my actual account that I have poured all my resources and time into. You got to grind for this shit here too. This just came out not too long ago. If you think that's not enough, I have I2 of Kezo. He was the last character that came out before her. I have an I6 Lady Knifel. I have an I2 Rhythm. I have an I2 Fina. I have an I1 Fushu. And I even have, like, you know, characters like her that's I2. Not only that, if you come over here and look at my immersive theater, I'm sitting at 89 stars. For those of you who are wondering, that's Act 12. And this would be 5 out of 5 if I knew this butterfly needed to be shot down and I wouldn't run out of ammo with this weapon, right? We can go and clap her cheeks too. I'm just trying to show you, I play this game a lot, quite casually with the time that I have, right? I am 33 with 2 different businesses, 2 kids, a wife, all that. I'm a busy. And so when you consider my dynamic, I have put in a lot of time with this game with the time that I have available. I know that this game is not in a great spot and it's dwindling downward. I know the flow of the game. I know the good things about the game that make it enticing for players to come back. And what can we do to prevent this game from constantly going downward? Because one of the questions and metrics that, you know, publishers as well as management looks at is, are we going to be able to sustain a player base? And are we going to be able to not only recoup our ongoing production pipeline costs, but then turn a profit and, you know, make this game a worthwhile investment? That's insane that just happened. One of the things I like to look at is downward trend in monthly players, which we just assessed. And one of the things that goes into that is, not is it making money, but is it tracking far below the business case we sold to investors or management, right? Now, the caveat here is if there's enough whales and dolphins, you can have a player base of 5,000 people, but the Whales and Dolphins are literally keeping the game alive. And with a game with a massive cosmetic incentive for monetization, such as Duet Night Abyss, Whales can very much keep the game alive, not only thriving, but surviving and thriving, you know? And so that's something I don't know, because there's not really a real tangible like website to know what Duet Night Abyss is doing. I can only hope that Whales and Dolphins are keeping the game afloat. But the other thing that it acts like a deterrent for potential players of interest is the rapport of the game. And right now, the negative community sentiment becomes the common public perception, especially when you have such a small community. Once you have a small community, the loud minority now has a megaphone. And so whatever they're saying about the game, it's going to become an active deterrent for players of interest. Now it's compounding on top of the downward trend. And to get the game back in good light, we need good rapport. But if rapport is bad, then now people aren't trying the game. Do you get where I'm going with that? This has become a huge problem because negative sentiment acts as a deterrent for future players of interest. Complaints about performance issues, safety and security jump scares, content loop feels lackluster. These are all occurring right now for Duet Night Abyss. And it pains me to say that, but this is happening. Once again, we take all of that in the situation, and it puts this game in a critical state, you know? Now, I already talked about ongoing production pipeline costs, but we haven't talked about portfolio pressure. Portfolio pressure is when a publisher has multiple titles underperforming. They'll cut the quote unquote weakest or most expensive live service product first, even if those could limp along longer on a small base. And so when I look at this game's production pipeline and portfolio, the good news is I don't know any of these games. I don't know any of these games. Black Myth Wukong does not count. That's kind of just Hero Games kind of just got in there to like secure a good relationship with Game Science. But this belongs to Game Science. It's published and developed by Game Science. So this does not really belong to Hero Games. I'll be honest with you. The games that belong to them in terms of going under that publisher is all right here. And I feel like Duet Night Abyss is actually a prized game in their portfolio, because I don't know any of these other games. Now, it does say they have Titan Knight and Azir coming soon. This kind of puts, I would say this is a point against Duet Night Abyss, because these could be games that they could say, let's just, you know, recoup the cost, call it a day, and let's put investment into our future projects. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm looking at this from a rational standpoint. I think right now, Duet Night Abyss is entered a critical state. I do. I think it's entered a critical state. That doesn't mean it's going to EOS. That means if this game doesn't start showing signs of sustaining a community, you know, bottoming out the way you saw like Monster Hunter Wilds bottom out, it now has bare minimum, no matter what, peak player base of monthly 85,000 people on Steam, right? If this game doesn't start sustaining the 5,000 players that it probably has, 5 to 10,000, if they keep going downward, and then Whales and Dolphins aren't spending a lot of money, we could very well be looking at a potential end of service announcement. That is a reality that can happen. And so with that said, what solution or what is missing, Smack, would you say from this game that could not only prevent that from happening, sustain its player base, and even bring in potential new players of interest? I think this is a conversation that the community needs to not only have, but also take into consideration. Right now, there needs to be a lot more positive rapport for the game, but you can't expect positive rapport if negative things are occurring. That's just a reality, right? So what is the audience that Duet Night Abyss needs to capture? I'm gonna be real. I think these guys need to not abandon gacha market. I think they still have their gacha enticing aspect, which is you can get every player in the game when you come back into our patch, play our immersive theater, and just play the game casually without spending any money. And you can I6 them. You can do all that. I think that doesn't need to go away, but I think a much more big market capture and budget needs to be allocated towards looter shooters and ARPGs like Diablo and Path of Exile. But in order for you to even be able to market towards those groups, you need to fix your replay loop in your game to be enticing to those parties. That means in your game as is right now, the only thing keeping those parties coming back is the new players in the immersive theater. The new characters you're dropping in the immersive theater, which I think is a good aspect, but it's the only aspect right now. Your replay loop for grinding your in-game gear isn't fun. It's just turn my brain off and do what I can. And what separates your game from games like Warframe is that Warframe came out 15 years ago before they started dropping games in rapid fashion like they do today. Not only that, but Warframe did continue to expand upon it. Maybe they had a much more bigger passion project on their hands and commitment to it, but it is not the game it was 15 years ago. And there's a lot more density and depth to that game's core loop than your game today. And I don't think time is on y'all's side, just being completely honest. But what you can do is you can first say, we need to expand upon the core gameplay loop of our game, because this is not a game that has an audience that gives a fuck about story or exploring beautiful worlds. Looter shooters don't really care much about that. They care about looting, shooting, and grinding and playing with their boys. That said, you need more in-game modes that are single player and co-op, most importantly, friendly. Your mode, just think about Diablo and Path of Exile. Diablo and Path of Exile are fun because they aren't just single player, but people can go into a rift with their boys and they have their roles, right? They have their roles, like you have the DPS, the secondary DPS, and then you have a healer and a tank and stuff like that. But they go in there and they try to optimize as much as they can the builds they worked so hard to build up with the tedious grind and shit. And then they go into there as fast as they possibly can, and then they pray, most importantly, that they get those legendary in-game gear drops. You need a mode like that in adjacent to immersive theater. Immersive theater, that's your character acquisition mode. But where's your mode for people to play and test the density and optimization and efficiency of their characters with their boys or by themselves, optional, for the pure purpose of efficiency and in-game gear grind? Because legendary drops is one of the strongest foundations of why people play Diablo and Path of Exile, right? And then in Warframe, people have so many other avenues of grind and co-op with their boys. Whereas in this game, not really anything there. You see what I'm saying? I think the most important thing for this game is to focus on that primarily. I'm going to give a hot take here, guys. I don't think we need any more regions. I think we need more instance-based maps. More instance-based maps. I would say, fuck the regions. Your open world exploration, kind of don't care about it. You know, and I feel like they don't want to let that aspect go because they're still kind of staying, or they still have the remnants of what makes gacha games attractive in their game, such as that. Gacha players love that. But I don't think it's enough of an attractive element of your game to sustain it. I don't think it's worth it. I think you guys need more of an emphasis on the looter shooter aspects than you need on the gacha aspects. Gacha players, let's face it, they don't want to grind in your game. Gacha players think they can come into Duet Night Abyss when it drops a new update and just get the character without actually playing the game. That's not how it works. And so you kind of just gotta say fuck the gacha players at this point. You really do. I don't know what else to say other than that. The thing I want to mention is I see in their in-game panel, there's 3 blank panels, which means they're definitely planning to expand upon their in-game with more modes that I hope are going to be more co-op incentivized. I'm somebody who genuinely enjoys this game on a casual level, as I'm sure many of you guys watching this video do. I think people that like Duet Night Abyss, I genuinely think y'all should be spending money, because I actually firmly believe, as the size of this community is pretty small, your dollar does count right now. The dollars being spent on the cosmetics does count right now. Now, if you have some animosity or vitriol towards the company because of whatever the hell your grievances are with the game, hey man, that's between you and them. I completely get it. Me personally, as a free game with only a gacha cosmetic monetization, I have all the patience in the world. I can always go play something else while they're, cooking this game in the kitchen. But for what it's worth, coming back and playing characters like Zilio, and then the other guy that's getting ready to come out who's going to be her best in slot, I have enough fun grinding these characters out and playing 4 times a week or so and, you know, seeing the cast result in the game that's actually free. Don't gotta spend no money on it. Opening up this big radius, seeing lightning shock down. I mean, I own every single character except this guy because I don't give a rat's ass about him. He doesn't have his real supportive engine yet, which, to be fair, you can put anybody in this game with Fushu and Fina and they're gonna fucking slap cheeks. But I just don't feel a need to pull this guy right now until he gets a real Umbro engine behind him. This dude hasn't come out yet. He comes out next in like, I don't know, honestly, not too far from now. And this will be the next person that is going to be, you know, acquired for free. I don't mind the state of the game right now because I have all the patience in the world and all the other games to play and all the other things to do. But I know there's a lot of people who like trying to find games to main. And unfortunately, I feel like Duet Night Abyss actually it could be that game. There's a shit ton of grind. But it's most certainly still missing that full package of a video game. And that could take, I'll be real, boys, that could take a whole year. That could take maybe 2 years. You know, like I said, Warframe's been out for like 15 years, man, you know. This is kind of one of those games where you got to be willing to have patience. I'm going to continue playing the game as I always do. I do enjoy it. And like I said, it's not a deal breaker for me how long they're taking. But it is a deal breaker for the game itself because majority of people don't have that sentiment. That's going to wrap up these thoughts. Thanks for watching. Peace, love, and happiness. I'll catch you guys on the flip side.